So in the previous lecture, we have added dates to our app and in particular to the movements. So now we have a huge bug in our app. So when we sort the movements in our user interface, and so let's now go ahead and fix that bug. So now before getting to work, I just need to mention that I actually recorded this video after finishing this entire project. And so the code that you see here will be slightly different than what you have at this point. So for example, you are not going to have these two lines here yet in the display movements function, but that's not a big deal. You will just keep in mind that as you progress this in this section, so, but anyway, let me now show you the bug, which is this. As we click here on sort, these movements do indeed get sorted correctly. So, but watch what happens here to these dates as so the moment dates as they are called. So, as you see, stay in place. Now they move around here a little bit because these parts are correctly changed. But this August 1st here, for example, will always stay here in the beginning, no matter what the value here is. So you see it is still the same date, but now with this different movements value. Now this happens because all we are doing here when we are sorting is to just sort the movements array, but not the date. So that is here. So here we are simply using the dates from the account object simply at the current index, but with no regard of sorting the movements. And so this is what we need to fix. We need to basically sort these two at the same time. Now I said in the previous lecture that in the real world we would probably have an object for the movements. So for example, containing the value of the movements, the date, and some other properties about this movement. And so let's now actually create an object like this. So basically combining movement and date. So that is we can sort them both together. So that is going to be the easiest way of doing this. We could also combine them into a nested array. But I think this way it is going to be a bit more explicit and easier to understand. Now before we do that, let's actually also make sure. So you need to make sure that when we call this display movement, you actually pass in the entire account. So because there was also some error about this earlier, so let me find that to you. So right here, so display movements, you should not pass the current account dot movements, so but really the entire account. So that is very important. And so here see this function. So here let's now create that combined movements with dates, basically an array of objects where each of them contains a movement on the date. Instead of having them like we have right now in a separate array for moments and one for the dates. So this doesn't make sense. So but again, I'm not going to change the entire application architecture now. And so I'm just going to do that right here. We display the moments and so basically just temporarily that we can then easier to sort them together. So let's call this here very explicitly combine moments and dates. So here we just going to over account dot movements and then we want an array of the same length as the movement. So let's use a map here and then in there each of them is going to be called a movement. So they actually also need the index. So we need parenthesis here. So the index and then here I want to return an object. So we cannot just do this, but we actually need to wrap this into parenthesis. I'm not sure if you did this earlier, we could just also create a function body like this and then return the object with whatever we want here. So this would be the same as specifying parenthesis and then the object that we want to return. So here we want to return the current moment and then also the date. So let's specify a date property and then this one is going come from this account. So the account that we are currently passing into this function and then dot movement states at the current index position. So let's use at and then y. So again here we are not doing the sorting. We are doing to create a new data structure in which we can then easily sort them these two. So let's log this to the console and then check the result. So let's see here, it has the same length. So now it's again 8 for 8 movements, but now here it is called move. So let's call this maybe movement. So movement, and then it is going to be the value of move, because remember that this array here is just an array of these values. So checking this out again, so the movement is the value, and then we have the corresponding date. So nice. We can just sort this object by the value here, and then the date will of course be sorted as well in the same order. So now we are going to replace this part here. For now, let's just comment this out, because of course we still need to make sure of this sort property. So but now we are going to do in a different way. What we did was, if sort was true, then we would sort these movements, and if not, then this value would just become the movements without the sorting. But now let's do it a bit differently. So now we already have the default, which is the one, and then we say if sort and more like this. And if we sort, then here we simply apply the sort to this array. Dot sort, and then we'll automatically mutate the original array, which is not a problem in this case. But as we already know, if we don't want that, then we can use the two sorted methods. So here that is exactly what we want. Just going to take this array and then sort it. If sort is set to 0, and if not, well, then it is simply this array. So will be rendered in the next step. So let's get rid of this one and specify or sort of function. And so while we earlier we had a minus b, because we already had the values. So we were already sorting the movements array. Now we need of course grab that's a dot movement and b dot movement, because we still want to sort by those values. So now mouse is no longer defined. So let's fix that in the next step. So we have now our data structure. We have it sorted. So if we want, and now this data structure that will actually loop over. So combined moves dates, and now we need to adopt this code. So here instead of movements, now we get an object. So let's call that object. So here we can just destructure that. So we need to use the exact same name as the property names. So movement and date. So this will then create these two variables out of the object. And we could actually do the structuring right here in this place. But let's keep it bit more explicit by doing it like this. Now here we are creating a conflict with this variable. So maybe let's call this here movement date. Movement date. And so now we do the same movement date, and with this we are okay. So we just need to change the things that we had moved before. So this is now called movement, and here we have the actual date. So this was where the bug was coming from. So we will now no longer read the date from the original array. We will get the data structure that we built, and then exactly that movement date right here. And then I believe that these two lines you will not have to add. So again, you go through the rest of the section, make sure that you use the correct values. So this move does no longer exist. So it will again be movement, and here I think everything is now perfect. So the date and the local, and also down here see, let's try to reload this. So we have no more bugs. Now let's check if this actually works. For example, here this biggest value is on April 1st. So let's see what happens now here. So here the date stayed together with the value. So let's unsort this. Let's check another one. So this 642 May 8th. Let's sort. Let's see if the date stays with it. So where is it here? See, and with this we fixed our bug, and we did so by always keeping the date together with the moment value itself, simply by creating this combined data structure here, right? So let's just get rid of this. I think now we are ready to move to the next lecture. And just keep in mind that you will have to use this movement here instead of going to type in the video. That video, I will just type out this one. So that is now wrong. It needs to be movement now. So in order to work. And so this is all about the video. See you in the next lecture. Thank you.